a lot of what we're talking about as far as AI is concerned overall is, we have these big discussions about, oh, it can do this and it can do that. But what's happening now and what we're experiencing at O3 is that we have accessible solutions. We have a lot of things now that we can dive into that are readily available to us with the rise of generative AI, with the rise of large language models, that we can start solving some of these problems that Rob and I spoke about kind of right away. So we were looking at, what does, a potential use case look like? And I'm going to go back to what we were discussing just a moment ago, which is how do we solve some of these smaller workflow issues? How do we make it such that we can, help somebody out and turn a 20-minute operation of, daily routine into something that takes them seconds or minutes, and ultimately makes, as this quote mentions, the healthcare provider a better, quicker decision maker so they can move on to the more valuable work that they're doing over the course of their day. So I'm going to invite in Josh Friedman. Josh is a senior engineer here at O3. He's also leading up a lot of our AI efforts to run what's not exactly a live demo, but close. Obviously with these things, we want to make sure they work. So it is a recorded live demo, but it's still a live demo. We'll dive in here real quick. And what I wanted to start with was just a common thing that happens. Rob was talking about, some of the, workflow management issues that occur, right? And a real sort of simple problem that occurs on a regular basis is that a nurse calls out. That the nurse calls out isn't necessarily the issue, but really, finding their replacement is an issue, and it becomes a really challenging one. There's a lot of things that have to happen, right? One, whoever the manager is going to go look at that nurse and go look at the unit they're working in, and they're going to need to go check a calendar, right? They're going to need to go check availability and see who else is available. They're going to need to make sure that whoever is going to be available has the proper skill set and the proper experience to actually fill that need. And then what if there are multiple candidates? You're putting the onus back on an individual to really make the decision on who should be kind of going next. And then that doesn't even speak for the cases. Maybe the person just got off a shift, right? They're exhausted. Maybe it shouldn't be the right person to put on and fill in for that nurse. So there's a lot of decision making that can happen here. And anytime we see a flow like this, anytime we see an experience like this, there are naturally friction points within that experience, which ultimately cause stress and strain back on whoever the manager is and whoever has to manage that. But it also makes for possible problems, right? You could end up putting the wrong nurse on a shift, and then all of a sudden, then in the moment, you don't have enough providers available to really solve problems, right? So there is a lot of issues that this little thing or seemingly little thing can kind of cause. So I'm going to flip this over to Josh, and we're going to walk you through a little bit of a quick demo that we put together to show you how, through the power of AI, we can better solve for this experience. Josh, welcome.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Real quick, let me share our little video here. And can you guys see my screen?
Again.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to start this off by sort of, again, attacking the problem that Mike just walked us through. So we're going to ask this question. Hey, we know that a nurse just recently called out for the second shift of the week. And we're asking the question, can you find two nurses that fill those spots? The immediate response from the AI is that, oh, okay, I've recognized what this shift is. It's a length of 8 hours. It has one open position. And now I'm going to look at our staffing bench to see who is there and who is available. So what we get back is there was a review of the staffing bench, relative to our shift. And we've come up with two possible candidates. One is Nurse Sarah Kim, who has specializations in neonatal and pediatric care. She also holds an NRP certification, has 3 years of experience, and has availability on the 4th of November. Now, the shift that we're asking for is actually on the 5th. So what the nurse manager did in this case is say, hey, we have a really good candidate here. She doesn't actually have the availability listed, but she may still be considered for this spot given her willingness to adjust availability or kind of worst case scenario. Now, the second option we were provided with is Nurse Olivia Martinez. And she has specializations in cardiology and intensive care. She carries the relevant certifications that the shift requires, including NRP, and has 6 years of experience, which is fantastic. And then even more so, she has the availability on the 5th of November, which is exactly what the shift is asking and looking for. So again, we get a little nice sentence there at the end of that suggestion where she would be an excellent fit. So what is followed up here is then a sort of final summary of what has just happened. So what we get is that, you know, again, while Nurse Sarah Kim is not explicitly available on the 5th, she has no shift scheduled immediately before or after the 5th. So she might be open to that flexibility. Otherwise, you know, Nurse Olivia Martinez is available precisely on the day needed. Now, nurse manager, knowing the steps that we just ran through in that prior slide, the nurse manager can sort of point out that, hey, there's one more thing we need to do before we're confident in scheduling a nurse. And that is to check on their weekly hours to ensure scheduling them does not lead to overtime without eligibility or approval, or again, infringement on sort of the conditional mandatory rest periods that nurses have after long shifts or over a course of a week. So then there's a bit here where the AI asks the human to continue here, to where, hey, if you would like me to proceed with these checks, please let me know. So at this point, the nurse here is like, you know, absolutely. Can you please factor in all of those steps, you know, in our discussion here, and then please provide a recommendation from that. Now, this is important, and this is exactly, it's just a simple question, but there's a lot of work, as we previously covered, that will happen during this. So again, it's everything we listed before. And now what's happening is, first of all, we've got a initial response that comes back from nurse manager where, again, we have those two nurses, and we need to first verify the nurse's qualifications and certifications. You know, again, the nurse manager has already done this in part, but we're going to re-review as part of the whole recommendation. The second step is, again, checking their availability, review their work scheduling leading up to and after the 5th, just to ensure that this doesn't involve any new conflicts. And 4, we confirm the assigned that the assigning nurse to the shift will not result in overtime again, or violate those sort of mandatory periods. And then finally, ensure the work is distributed fairly among the staff. So we look at the full roster, the staffing bench, to see who's been scheduled, who's been overscheduled, et cetera. So what the nurse manager gets out of here is, we already know that, again, both of them have the required certifications, and they have the experience to work in the neonatal ICU. And now the nursing manager will proceed to check their work schedules, hours, again, any relevant factors to make an informed recommendation. And what it's actually going to do is write code to do this in the database that houses the staffing bench and the shifts. So again, you'll notice that we have a code interpreter working. I would mention that in a production environment, this would be on the back end, so the user would never see any of this, but it's important to know kind of how far these AI assistants have come to where we can actually write code. So you'll see a couple responses here. The first one was, hey, I found an error in my code accessing the files. Let's rewrite this a little bit. The second one is sort of, hey, I misunderstood a bit of the data structure, so let's also rewrite that a little bit in our code. And now, bam, I've figured out how to read the structure perfectly, and I can get the answer that I need. And this is coming from the nurse manager entirely itself in the backend. It would work like any other backend system that we would have. So now what we get out is, hey, based on the analysis that nurse manager has done, we have a couple items to factor into our recommendations. So again, Nurse Sarah Kim, she specializes in neonatal and pediatric care, which fits the requirement. She is not scheduled for a 5th for shift 02 on the target day of November 5th. She's scheduled hours there are 0 hours total this week. So that means that she has no other shift to sign at the moment. So we can be confident sort of on her overage. And her max weekly hours are 40. She has overtime eligibility. And she also, again, notes that the 5th is not one of her listed availability days, but we can talk to her after that, if that's the case. And then finally, with Nurse Olivia Martinez, she specializes again in intensive care. She's not scheduled for that shift. She has 0 hours as well this week. And her max hours are 36, and she does not have that availability date listed. So finally, in summary, given this information, nurse manager is able or is recommending scheduling Olivia Martinez for the open position in shifts, the second shift of November. She has, again, the appropriate experience, is directly available on that date, and has no hours scheduled prior. So we've factored in all of those individual cross-reference items that we talked about before that are, a bottleneck in this process, and have done it just by asking a single question, which is, kind of removing a lot of that painful work. So, and then it also points out that regarding the second nurse, that we only have one position open, so we do not need to factor them into the shift. But if Olivia Martinez is unavailable for some reason, we can reach out to her and go that route. So the final thing, and sort of going back to what Mike was saying, is we want the human to be in control of these decisions. So we finish off with a question of, hey, would you like me to proceed with scheduling my recommendation, or would you like to support another option? So this is the point where, again, that nursing manager gets to decide which direction we're going to go here. Now, I could have said, hey, let's look at the rest of our roster to see if there's anybody else who might also be qualified, just so we can weigh some more options, or we can continue with the scheduling here. So you'll see in a moment here that what we actually do is we say, hey, we're going to proceed with this, thanks for the insight. And I also add in a little bit of a smiley face at the end there, because we like to talk to our assistants in a nice, kind manner. Never know what's going to happen in the future. And so what we write here, again, thank you for the insight. Can you please schedule Olivia? And then here's my lovely smiley face here at the end. And what we're going to do is we're going to run that. And just like the previous example, nurse manager is actually going to take a look at the database that we have, that we uploaded, and update it with Olivia to be scheduled on that account. And it actually outputs the updated schedule. So we can see here, and also finally, the nurse manager assistant followed up with a smiley face, kind of playing off my my happiness here. So ultimately, I think this is a great example of what we can really do with AI, and this is only changing and growing as time goes on here.
This is great, Josh. And apologies for folks on Zoom. I know this is maybe a little fuzzy for you guys, but on YouTube, I think it should be okay. But just to sort of highlight this, I think one of the critical things here is that Josh built this in an hour. And I think that's really what we're talking about as far as the power of AI to really solve some of these issues. Simply by connecting the dots between what we have as far as these various different data sets that we need to explore, looking at how we can sort of tie those together to really look at those issues, and then really spitting that out. I mean, Josh went through it in detail, but the reality is helping somebody make that decision a lot quicker. No different than, I guess, if you're asking ChatGPT for some, menu instructions for the evening, if you're trying to cook dinner. I mean, that's where we're at. As time progresses and we see opportunities at O3 for that to even transition into being more voice activated, looking at these things actually in more robotics as the nurses are sort of moving around their environments, and being able to sort of deal with things from that perspective, as opposed to, using a typed interface. I mean, there's some real opportunity now to really help to build these virtual assistants so that the healthcare providers can really do their job.